Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our very special panel. I'm Jessica Cecil. I'm founder of a media company sharing insight on disinformation and how it's evolving and how we counter it. It's called Athena, and please follow me, link with me on LinkedIn if you want to know more. The Ukraine conflict, of course, has changed how we all think about the future of warfare, and we're all familiar with the physical aspect of that, and we've heard a lot this morning all about that. And with it, we've become used to accelerating cycles of innovation. But there is, of course, another war, the information war, expressed through inauthentic and misleading content, disinformation. The technology and methods of this information war have also changed as the Ukraine conflict has gone on, and the cycles of innovation have also accelerated. So, how has it evolved and where is it going? I'm joined by three guests who are really well placed to answer that. Konrad Adamowicz, welcome. He's Deputy Director of Strategic Comms and Countering Foreign Disinformation at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs here in Poland.
Thank you, pleasure to be here.
Andrii Bohdanenko is from Osavul, a Ukrainian-born tech company which describes itself as delivering OSINT-powered AI to deliver situational awareness. And Vlad Galu. Vlad is co-founder of Refute, a UK startup which has recently raised a £5 million seed funding and aims to fight disinformation by detecting and responding to campaigns at the speed of attackers. So we're going to start with setting the scene. How has the Ukraine-Russia conflict changed the disinformation landscape? Andrii, briefly, can I start with you?
Yeah. Originally, we presume disinformation as simply telling lies, but after 2022, it became a kinetic tool also for Russians. And before the war, Russians used disinformation to create or influence somehow on the Ukrainian internal discourse, sometimes about elections, sometimes about corporate conflicts, but the emerging trends of LLM's development and AI developments matched the real interest to the hybrid warfare, and now Russia is more sophisticated, more dangerous. They use cheaper and AI-powered solutions to spread disinformation and do information operations. But what I would like to highlight here, the main change from our perspective, is the multi-domain approach. Russia don't use information operations solely. They do duplicate it and synchronize with other domains. And I mean cyber, information, and physical. So if the missiles strike on infrastructure, this is also the information operation. Because while you will be assessing the damage, which is real and feasible, the information operation has already done its work.
Fantastic. Konrad, is that what you're seeing as well?
Absolutely, yes. And to answer the question, what did the Ukraine war change in analyzing and understanding the topic of foreign interference and manipulation? I would say that it changed everything. Because for many years here in Europe, but not only in Europe, I think we underestimated the damage potential of combined kinetic and non-kinetic operations by our adversaries. During the conflict, and especially in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen quite unprecedented and well orchestrated operations that are combining these two factors, which are leading to quite devastating effects. And we see that Russia is constantly improving in the way that they are conducting these operations. But also, in some way, it also helped us, and by us I mean the EU, and especially the societies in the EU, the people in the EU, to understand that this is the actual threat, not just the bombs, arms, or drones, but also weaponized information that is being utilized to quite quite enormous extent. It helped us to understand that to understand that threat and build our own capabilities in order how to counter them, even though it still remains quite a significant challenge.
Thank you. Vlad, you're from outside, you're working from the UK, but nevertheless, you're looking at the implications of how Russia has played the information warfare as a result of what's happening in Ukraine.
Indeed.
What are you seeing?
Thank you, Jess. I'd like to take 30 seconds to explain what Refute does. So we are a UK technology startup. We started 2 years ago, and our focus is on pulling together all of the disinformation threads at scale across multiple geographies and interest areas to identify those sophisticated influence operations and disinformation campaigns that rely on both politicians, influencers, small and large, and technology-aided troll farms, bot farms, and the like. And we also provide response with our own capabilities and those of our partners. In retrospect, I would say since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia has shifted from being a sort of passively malign actor around Central Eastern Europe to a very actively malign actor. The war in Ukraine is expensive for them, but the information war is not. So they've been very actively trying to push policy changes and administration changes in all of the countries surrounding Ukraine to then make Ukraine vulnerable from a supply chain point of view, from a political and defense partnerships point of view. At Refute, we started very early monitoring the Romanian elections of 2 years ago. I'm born and raised in Romania, so beyond the personal, emotional connection to the subject, it was an amazing time to acquire a lot of data and learn a lot from that. And then we've done the same across Moldova and a few other countries, and we've seen some of the same narratives that the Russia playbook has had for a long time, playing on sowing doubt around a nation's own commercial and financial well-being, and then continuing with identity and faith-based narratives. And now with the invasion of Ukraine, the attempt to sow distrust in the merits of supporting Ukraine from a military perspective, especially in those countries with an elevated standard of living. And that is fascinating because it's a narrative that was used at the height of the Cold War in the United States, where Americans were actively discouraging from supporting their government investing in defense. We've put together a study for this. We have a report coming out. It's already come out. If you'd like a hard copy, please find me after this. I'm happy to give you one.
Fantastic, thank you. So that's how the threat has changed. What about the response? Turning to you, Konrad, what's the practical approaches? How have you thought about doing things differently as a result?
Well, first, in a way, it ties into the first answer they have given. We in Poland, what we believe is the best defense against disinformation and FIMI is well-informed and resilient society. I mean, we could discuss for hours probably different technical capabilities in how to stop or hamper spread of disinformation over social media. There are countless tools for that, but in a way they can only be so much effective. And we found out that what we need to really focus on is on showing the public the threat and teaching them very basic techniques on how to respond to them and how to be resilient. So we dedicated, apart from all the technical infrastructure, the way that we see that this disinformation narratives are coming into our infosphere, the way that we hold discussions with the social media companies, we are dedicating most resources towards education and presenting the threat as is. For example, they not always have to be very obvious what we are doing there. But for example, we noticed that it's nothing new, right? But Russians are always trying to play into polarization, into sowing discord among different groups. And we organize a program of of quite a few depolarization debates over Poland, were financed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where we gather people in the room from very different social stratas, with very different political beliefs. We were giving them a controversial topic or subject, and we were just listening to the conversation that they were having with these specially trained moderators that we found out through some NGOs that we are cooperating with. So we were trying to foster the communication between different groups in a way that it does not right from the bat spiral into this very heated discussion where arguments are not actually being heard but just being said. So we want to continue that program working through the depolarization, but also through just spreading knowledge and presenting the mechanisms of Russian disinformation in Poland. So obviously the attribution or exposures that we are doing mainly with our partners, working with schools, high schools as well, universities. But also with some dedicated programs towards senior citizens that are often very much targeted. I can give you an example. If you're lucky to have a grandparent, just take their iPad and have a look at the YouTube algorithm. I did it with my grandma, and it was incredible stuff. And I would love. So we had quite a long discussion after that on how why certain things are being presented on her timeline, which was very refreshing and interesting conversation in itself. So I feel that we have a lot of work as the society as the society as whole, and us as the public institutions in creating a space where we can discuss these issues and give some tools for the society. I know that the topic of today's conversation is information and technology, so we should give you some details on the way that we counter it through our means. But I will not delve too much into that subject. But I can assure you that both the Ministry of Digitalization, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and our National Research Institute are also quite heavily leaning into that side, especially in terms of analysis, but also partially in let's say countering it as well.
That's very interesting. So it's a kind of tessellated picture.
Yes.
Do you have, just one follow-up, do you have any efficacy metrics? Do you know what works or what doesn't, or are you trying various approaches?
I think I'm going to give you a slightly controversial response to that, but I have never seen a research about how effective the disinformation actually is that I found to be convincing in terms of methodology that has been used. It is extremely difficult to have a research that's showing that this particular narrative has been accepted by this and this amount of people and it has been so effective. I don't believe that this kind of research is actually possible. We see it through some indirect means that we see some changes in the behavior of the social groups, but this is always much more complex than just disinformation. It would be very easy to say that whatever is happening in our societies is Russia's fault or Russia's, China's, Belarus, whatever fault of their disinformation. It's a part of an answer. But we decided to take a leap of faith, and regardless of how the disinformation campaigns, whether they're actually effective, we need to counter them anyway. So we hope that it brings results. We are having some evaluations after the programs that we are doing, but ultimately we will see in a couple of years, by the way, that the resilience, whether the resilience has been built.
Thank you. Really interesting. Andrii, same question to you. What are you doing? What's happening at the front line, and how are you anticipating and responding to these threats?
War, if you're only defending, you let your enemy control the fight, and information is the same. That's why we should move from identifying to anticipating. We need to preemptively look at the informational landscape, and we at Osavul, we developed the preemptive situational awareness product called Janus, and recently we have been awarded by European Innovation Council. Europe believe in the idea by Euro, and this is exactly what I bring to the discussion, because the disruption is what we need. We cannot only identify disinformation and ask and request platforms to take down some accounts, because this is a dynamic process, and the result at the end of the day is quite not that feasible as it could be. What we do is the disruption, and the idea is simple. You don't need to freeze the content, you need to freeze the infrastructure, the capacity to repeat it. And in 2022, we had a case with Russia Today. Russia Today was banned in Germany, but they created mirror websites, mirror accounts in Telegram, TikTok, and continue spreading disinformation and did information operation there. And a classical approach would be just freeze these upcoming accounts. This is a dynamic process. But what we did, using our capabilities, we have identified the person, Austrian guy living in Russia, who has an entity in Germany and the network behind. We have found crypto wallets, we have found LLMs accounts, and we blocked and take them down. It doesn't mean that we did it and Russia Today is no more longer exist in Germany, no. But it makes information operation for Russia more expensive and efforts consuming. And this is what technological capabilities could help us do.
That's a really interesting point. Vlad, same question to you. What's the response?
Well, everything is about reducing the cost base. I'm going to draw a parallel to the kinetic war we've seen in Ukraine. So if you remember, in the early days of the war, we were using very expensive missiles to shoot down very cheap drones. It's very much the exact same thing in the information warfare space. With the advent of generative AI and AI agents, it's become dirt cheap for threat actors to create disinformation campaigns that can be very effective. The onus will never be on them to create high quality content with it. They can use bottom shelf AI, Gen AI technology to create the content, whereas for us in our space, the bar of admission is that much higher because people expect us to deliver a high level of clarity and something resembling certainty. So for that, we need to truly democratize both compute and AI and have assured capabilities across Europe and NATO. I'm sure everybody in the room is aware that right now, all of the spend and all of the resources of the planet are going into a single direction, and compute and AI have become prohibitively expensive for everybody else. That is not a tenable situation.
Yeah, thank you. So, looking forward, you represent Poland, but you represent NATO, you represent the EU. What are the wider lessons that your allies and fellow members of those organisations should learn from what we've been discussing? What are you putting forward as the big scalable lessons that define the new environment?
Well, that's being sole representative of NATO, EU, and Poland at the same time. That's a little bit overwhelming, but I'll try to answer to best of my ability. I would say that, especially over the course of last year, I think what we learned is that here in Europe, in EU, NATO, we really like to label everything and put everything into very neat boxes, you know, that this is disinformation, this is hybrid, this is cyber, this is kinetic, and so on and so forth. Call it with 11 different names and try to respond to each of it accordingly, preferably with a separate department or a unit that is dealing with that topic. And we can see by analyzing the situation in Ukraine, or even analyzing this the hybrid Russian operations in Poland, that our adversary is not treating these elements as a separate, let's say, strands of their activity.
Yeah.
This is all happens at the same time. This drone incursion in Poland or drone strikes in Ukraine are always coated in some cognitive operation that is often followed by some kind of cyber attack. And the thing here is that we need to be what we learned from from Ukraine over the course of last few years, that in the realities of the modern conflict, you need to be very agile and you need to be very quick in adjusting your tactics to whatever is happening in the battlefield, because we've seen it all over the course of last 4 years in Ukraine. Everything changed like 3 times over, but where still the Ukrainian ingenuity is managing to stay on top of the game. So that's the thing that I think is the biggest lesson for us here in the EU or in NATO, is to start treating this as one holistic, well-coordinated operations, and also adjust our institutions to be more agile in responding to such threats. Otherwise, we will be always stuck in the endless loop of coordinations and discussions instead of actually going forward.
And how much work is there to get to that?
Some.
Okay.
Some, of course, I'm not saying that everything is perfect, but we see that we try to learn our lesson. We are building more integrated systems. So I can speak for Poland right now, that we're building these integrated systems, and over the course of like last 18 months, there's been quite a lot of developments in the way that we respond to such threats. Obviously, it always could be faster and more streamlined, but we are getting there, and this is, I think, that the biggest issue here. Let's not treat that just, it's not defending against disinformation on the front line. We are defending on the front line in general. For Russia, in Russia's perspective, they are at war with West. We can call it hybrid warfare or activities below the threshold of war, because that's how we analyze it and we name it here in Europe. But for Russia, this is war, and they are conducting war not only with Ukraine, but more with generalized West. They are just using slightly different means. Now.
Thank you. I'm going to give you the last word, but first of all, Vlad, what's your answer to what the scalable lessons are?
I'm going to refer back to the war in Ukraine. There are so many lessons we can borrow. Ultimately, it's a problem that has many different solutions, and no one company can do everything. At Refute, we've chosen to pull up all of the threads and bring all of the signal sources into the one place and create that bird's eye view and that maximum situational awareness. So not just social media traffic, but also web knowledge and crypto payments knowledge, anything and everything. It's a huge space. Everybody will have a role to play. And I think that absolutely must inform the way we think about investment in this space. Back in November 2025, Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, said at the NATO Industry Fund in Bucharest, don't worry about demand. The demand will exist. And several months later, we see the exact same thing. So from the investment side, I think the key is not to try and judge the potential of companies in this space by how much of the market they can take for themselves, but how long-lasting their capabilities can be, and how well they can fit into the greater whole that makes up that ecosystem.
Final last word from you, Andrii.
Yeah. I agree that integration is one of the main points here, because we used to work with governments, and we spotted that sometimes some governments have different branches and departments that are not communicating with each other, and it creates a blind spot for Russian attackers, because they attack using multi-domain approach, and it means if your multi-domain departments don't cooperate, you already have the weakness in there. But I'd like to finish with that the cornerstone of Ukrainian resilience is and was the collaboration and coordination between multiple layers of actors. So this is not only a Ukrainian government or Ukrainian civil society or Ukrainian armed forces. This is a combination, because we, as a democracy, we have unique value. We have civil society, we have investigators, we have journalists, we have researchers, and this uniqueness should be scaled and used properly, because we as a tech company, we enable governments and our clients with technical capability, but at the end of the day, we are technical service provider. And if there is no coordination and collaboration behind the scene, it wouldn't be that effective as it could be.
Fantastic. What a great place to end. Thank you very much. Can you thank our panel?